heading into week 9 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few kickers I look to get on the wire this week. The first guy, Zane Gonzalez of the Carolina Panthers. So Zane Gonzalez had a big ball game in week 8 at the Atlanta Falcons. 17 fantasy points, 53 and a 56-yarder, a 27 and a 28-yarder, and an extra point in that ball game. And next week, week 9 versus New England, versus a defense that bends but don't break, I think Zane Gonzalez could have a good ball game in that one as well. Zane Gonzalez, he's been pretty accurate this season. He's been scoring a decent amount of fantasy points, except week 7 at the Giants, he only had 4. And right here versus New England, I think he has a decent game as well. And he's available in a whopping 98% of fantasy leagues. The next kicker, Badgley, Colts. So he's been pretty decent in the last 3 games, filling in for Rodrigo Blankenship. Week 6 versus Houston, 8 fantasy points. Week 7 at the 49ers, 7 fantasy points. And week 8 versus Tennessee, 7 fantasy points. So right here, week 9, he's got a great matchup, no doubt about it, versus the New York Jets that give up the most fantasy points to kickers on the season. And right here, we don't know the status of Blankenship. And like I mentioned, Badgley, he's been very good so far for this Indianapolis Colts team. He plays indoors, obviously, that's a plus. And then he's got the Thursday night football matchup versus the New York Jets. I think Badgley in this one versus the Jets could once again get anywhere from 7 to 8 fantasy points in that game. And that's a pretty decent add off the wire for a guy to do that. So right here, I like the matchup, obviously. I like what he's been doing, and he's available right now in 96% of fantasy leagues. The next kick is Dustin Hopkins of the Los Angeles Chargers. So I know on the photo here, he's still in a Washington football team jersey, but yet I haven't found the photo with him on the Chargers. But he did make his Charger debut in week 8 with 7 fantasy points. And right now it looks like a mistake by Ron Rivera and the Washington football team to cut Dustin Hopkins for Blewett. So far, Blewett, he's missed 3 field goals, and 2 of them have got blocked on the Washington football team. But anyway, right now, Hopkins, he's on a high-powered offense, obviously in the Chargers. He had 7 fantasy points in his debut. In week 9, he's got a great matchup with the Philadelphia Eagles that give up a decent amount of fantasy points to kickers here. So Hopkins and the Chargers, they're coming off a bad loss versus the New England Patriots, and I think they're going to go into Philly there and try to set the tone early and often and get a lot of red zone opportunities. I know the Eagles just came off a huge blow-up victory, but that was at a Detroit Lion team that I don't even think could beat some college teams right now. That's how bad they are. But anyway, Dustin Hopkins, we know he's been an accurate kicker. We know he's kicking the football well this season. And Washington, for whatever reason, money issues, or they just were into Blewett more than Hopkins, they got rid of him. But right here, good pickup for the Chargers, and it could be a good pickup for fantasy owners. He's available right now in 86% of fantasy leagues. The next kick is Joey Sly of the San Francisco 49ers. So Sly back on the radar. After the last few seasons, he's bounced around the league and really struggled. So Sly filling in for Robbie Gould the last few games. Week 5 at Arizona, 5 fantasy points. Week 7 versus Indianapolis, 6 fantasy points. And week 8 at the Chicago Bears, 13 fantasy points. So right here, week 9, it's going to be a tough ball game, no doubt about it, versus the Arizona Cardinals. But they're the type of defense that bends but don't break, in my opinion. With Joey Sly in the San Francisco 49er offense, might have a few opportunities to kick field goals in this game. And if they want to keep up, obviously, is San Francisco with a high-powered Cardinal offense. They're going to have to try some long field goals. They're going to have to go for it on some 4th downs as well. But Joey Sly right now, he seems pretty confident. He's kicking the football pretty well. And right now, as long as Robbie Gould's out, he's a decent add off the wire this week. And he's available right now in 89% of fantasy leagues. And the 5th and final kicker I look to get on the wire this week's Randy Bullock of the Tennessee Titans. So I've mentioned Bullock a number of weeks here on the waiver wire to get him. Right here, he just produces fantasy points, is Randy Bullock. Right now, he's got 3 games in a row with double-digit fantasy points. Week 6 versus Buffalo, 11. Week 7 versus the Kansas City Chiefs, 11. And Week 8 at the Indianapolis Colts, 12. So right here, Week 9 at the Rams, another game indoors for Randy Bullock. It's going to be a great matchup with the 6-2 Titans and obviously the 6-1 Rams here going at it in Week 9 in Los Angeles on Sunday Night Football. So Randy Bullock, he's had a resurrection this season to his career. He's been accurate. He's been hitting long field goals And I think once again he'll have another decent game in Week 9 at the Rams. And he's available right now in 82% of fantasy leagues. So that's a few kickers I'd look to get on the waiver wire heading into Week 9 of the fantasy football season.